2006. It's now October 2014, and we have a disclosure interview with this musician, now in his 70s, talking about his close encounters, his time with the British UFO Research Association, as I have been. This is about gun camera photographs taken by the United States Air Force and probably the RAF that he was shown after doing a musical number at a US Air Force base. Pete Wiltshire, the man, the musician, the witness, and his exposure to disclosure evidence decades ago. We start the interview in his garden on an early autumn day in October 2014.
Pete, you're a musician.
I'm afraid so.
And what sort of stuff did you do, or do you do?
Well, I was brought up on swing and jazz, but I've always loved country music. And the band in Southend, which finally became Hurston Wells and the Marksmen, we played a lot of country music, and consequently we were booked with lots of the big stars. I worked with Johnny Cash and Jim Reeves, Dolly Parton, Skeeter Davis, Billy Joe Spears, I don't know, George Hamilton IV. I don't know. You name them, I've met them. I still like it all. I mean, I still love country music, and I play steel guitar, pedal steel guitar, as well as guitar. I can scratch my way around a mandolin and a banjo, but they're my two main instruments. And although I'm unfortunately now suffering, as I've told you, with arthritis, I'm afraid I can't not only play my instruments properly, I can't pick them up.
Oh.
So that part of me has gone to the past now.
So tell us about how you got involved with the band and how all that sort of started.
Well, I was trying to think, really. I was approached by a guy, someone older than me, called Norman Hull, who played guitar, and he used to come round to my house 2 or 3 times a week, and we'd sit and play together. We usually play swing, and we slowly got into playing some country, and I just really taught myself over the course of time. It was called The Marksman, and our singer Andy was renamed by EMI Hurston Wells. He's now dead, unfortunately. Now he died in last year.
And what era are we talking? 19?
Oh yes, late 60s.
Oh right.
Mid to late 60s.
That was a heck of a time.
It was a hell of a time. Yeah, it was very special. We did our first television show in, I think, about 1963, 64, and we did one more, but that I can't remember. But after that, I became a session musician and moved to London, and there I just played with just so many people, I just can't name them. It's one of those things, it's a bit like being a bricklayer or something. You know, you do your job and you give them your invoice and wait for the money.
But that must be, you must have picked up an awful lot of really good stories.
Ah, really good stories. Well, some funny ones, yes. I mean, we were on the first Beatles tour when they did the tour of Scotland, which was when they had She Loves You in the charts. And I do remember being in the dressing room, and Ringo, unfortunately, I'll just put it nicely, he passed wind in the dressing room, and he was chucked out of the door by the rest of them, and he was standing there in just his white underpants and a vest. He was saying, "Oh, come on, lads, let me in. It was only a bloody fart." He said, so that was that. But we'd taken him in and gave him a beer, and that was that. But there's, I don't know, these things I can't recall them all now. Yeah, I met Paul a few times at EMI because I used to do sessions there. So
have you met him since?
Have I met him since? No, I haven't.
Now, you mentioned about country music.
Mm.
And are you familiar with any mechanisms within the industry of how artists would get on when they otherwise wouldn't? Where they would make arrangements and certain contracts?
Yes, that happened in our case when it was someone at EMI who decided that Houston Wells, the singer, was going to be the star. And so he got quite a lot of money. He got about a £40,000 advance. And we got paid £36 each as a session fee. Yes, yes.
Not joking. That's
something like that.
yeah, but
yeah.
that's
Yeah. And I mean,
big
he bought a brand new car and he bought a farm and lived very well. And we went off our separate ways. I went to work for a while with Burns Guitars in London as a demonstrator, and I used to help Jim Burns with creating new types of amplifiers and pickups and things like that, which I found quite enjoyable. And of course, all the session musicians used to come into the showrooms, and I got to know them. And Big Jim Sullivan, who was one of the most favourite ones, used to keep booking me on my steel guitar. In the end, I had so many sessions to do, I had to give up working for Burns, and I became a full-time session musician. But in the meantime, I was playing with 2 or 3 different bands. We went to Germany, we went to other parts of Europe, France, Ireland 2 or 3 times. And it was a very good time. I got to meet some marvellous people. I've managed to get, I've got 5 solo albums as a guitar player. I'll show you them a bit later.
Yeah.
Picture of me with all my long hair and the...
Slightly bushier beard as well.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I'll show you in a minute.
But this brought you to different places. Did it bring you onto places where you were able to pick up some information that you wouldn't normally pick up?
Yes, mainly the American air bases is which I've made some notes about my first UFO sighting, and I think it's my 8th one is my air base story, which is the most incredible of the lot.
What on earth thought, I mean, you're an artist, what made you even think about UFOs?
Well, because in about 1950 I was with my mum, and she was a good mum, not the kind of lady to leave a boy indoors while she went to the shops. So she took me. We lived in a place called Warrior Square, which is right in the heart of Southend, and she needed to go to the pharmacy. So we went out the door, and lo and behold, what did we see was a policeman with his bicycle. They all had bicycles in those days, and a group of people around him, and they're all looking and pointing up at the sky. A few yards away was another group of people, and another group of people, and another group of people, all looking up at the sky. So we looked up at the sky, and what appeared to be hanging over the pharmacy and the high street was a pink-coloured disc. The moon was on the left, and it shone its radiance on one side of this craft. It was quite still. I think it might have just been vaguely turning very slowly.
So the moon was full?
The moon, I don't remember if it was full or not, but it was enough to cast a metallic sheen on the side of this craft. And I said, "What's that, Mummy?" And she just hurried me along, because it wasn't long after the end of the war, and she probably thought it was a German secret weapon or something.
Yeah.
And anyway, we went to the chemist and came back, and the groups of people were still there, but this thing was drifting off towards the Thames estuary, and that was the last I saw of it. But
is there any reason why you think it was a UFO rather than
well, I didn't know what it was. I wasn't what it was, but I started to read some things about it, and I used to, on a Saturday and Sunday morning, I used to go up the hallway and collect the paper for Mum and Dad, and they always used to get the Sunday Express. And I looked at the front headlines, and it says, American Airman photographs flying saucer, and there was a picture of this one that an American airman had taken. It was the headlines of the Sunday paper. And I showed it to my mum, And we became interested and started to get the few books which contained information about it. And about 1952-3, I was in the back garden with my dad, and I just happened to glance over the fence, and there was this cigar-shaped brown thing which was slowly moving away. Not head first, it was moving that way, and it was going further and further away, and it disappeared. So that was the second sighting I'd had.
Can you describe these objects at all? Is there any details that you...
Not really. I mean, I can still see them in my mind now, at my old age. The pink one I saw with my mum was a disc, and it had a raised top, not very much. And as I say, it was pinkish in colour. And that's all I can really say about that. The one I saw with my dad was like a cigar. It looked like a cigar. It was brown, and as I say, it tumbled slowly across the sky and disappeared.
When you mean it tumbled, did it just...
It moved like that, but there was a slight turning motion in it as it went. That's all I can tell you about that.
How did you see there was a turning motion? Were there details or anything on it which could show that it was moving?
I think there was just a light on it, really, Miles. That's all I can say. But it did seem to have that movement. Anyway,
Lasted.
well, half a minute.
But if you put your hand at arm's length, would your thumb cover it?
Yes.
Your thumb would cover the moon as well, wouldn't it? Yeah, it covers it.
A bit of it.
Yeah.
You know, if the cigar was like that, I mean, I'll put my thumb up. You know, there's that.
So I'm trying to see how big it was.
It's hard to estimate the distance.
Thumb or tennis ball?
I would say.
Would cover it, or football?
I would say that it was the length of 3 double-decker buses. That's a guess.
Yeah.
Can I just ask what age you were when this...
Let me see. 43, 53. I was 10, and my first one I was about 7. And then later on in the 50s at high school, with lads at school, we were in the playground, and one of the boys said, "Look at that." And we looked up, and there was a silver disc, just a flattish silver disc, once again with a slightly raised top. And it was very slowly just creeping away from us, going down towards the estuary once again. And all the boys were going, "Wow, what was that?" The word flying saucer was mentioned because it had been heard then.
This is all essentially local to...
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, those incidents, my mum bought a copy of George Adamski and Desmond Leslie's book Flying Saucers of Landed, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And it was funny because some years later, let me just tell you about this. In 1961, outside a club called the Smugglers in Hullbridge, which isn't far from here, Hullbridge is on the River Crouch, and the club is right on the edge of it virtually. And across the other side of the river was a copse of trees. Now, we'd finished the gig, a band. It was part of the Marksmen and a couple of new guys, but we were bringing the gear outside to put into our respective cars. And over the other side of the bridge in this copse of trees was this tubular object, not cigar-shaped. It was like a cigar case, if you like, which was also a kind of a pinky brown, pinky orange colour, and it was just hovering near this copse of trees, and there were little spherical balls which were slowly going round it. I think there was 3, maybe 4 of them, and everyone was chattering and talking about it. There must have been 20, 30 people watched that. I mean, I've only had one instance where I've seen one on my own. All the rest of them have been with people, which has been a good thing, really.
What was the atmosphere at that time?
What?
With UFOs? Was there any? Was it?
I mean, I think for the people who witnessed it, I mean, I was keenly looking and interested because I knew didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew it belonged to the UFO category. But the people there were interested. They weren't scoffing it. In fact, one guy got in his car because he was parked in the pub opposite, and he tried to go round and over the bridge to get to it. And he came back and said the road was cordoned off by police, and they wouldn't say why or anything.
Very interesting.
It is.
It was sufficiently close.
Oh yes, I mean
low level that you could.
yes. I mean the river crouch is about as wide as this garden from here to the back gate, and just beyond that.
That's about maybe 20 yards.
Yeah, and about 20 yards again was this copse of trees. And funny enough, I went there with Victoria last year, and I've been telling her about this experience, and I said, I'm going to go down and have a look at that copse of trees, just to look at the Smugglers Club from the other side, which we did do, and the copse of trees have been completely taken down, and it was just grass. I don't know whether that's anything to do with it or not.
So this happened immediately after, soon after the...
I have no idea. No. I mean, this sighting was in 1961 or 2, and when I went to the River Crouch with Victoria, that was only last year, 2013. So anyway, what was this one here? Oh, the spheres.
What did you feel about this? Did this give you any...
I was amazed and pleased. I was pleased that lots of people saw something that I've studied, and I don't want to say believe, because I know.
Right, that's very important.
You know.
Why do you know? What gives you that conviction?
It's part of an inner feeling. It's part of the excellence of some of the photographs that I've taken, that I've seen, and my experiences talking to American airmen, and especially a retired colonel, which I'll come to soon. Okay, after that I was with my mum and dad in a car. It was about 1962. We were coming from Holbridge because my dad was friendly with the landlord, and I was in the front with my dad and my mum was in the back, and we were passing by fields, and there was a silver disc lazily and very slowly going across this field, and then it disappeared into some trees, and I didn't see any more of it.
With any size? Details?
Size, it's so difficult, Miles. Pretty big, I would say. I'd say 70 to 100 foot diameter, something like that.
How high off the ground? I mean?
Oh, it was quite high. It was above tree level, or most trees, until it went behind a whole lot of trees, and then we didn't see it because Dad was still driving. So.
And that was in this area?
Holbridge is about Rayleigh, CS5. It's about 9 miles away.
I mean, essentially, broadly speaking, you've got a lot of fairly substantial, fairly close CE2s, in this area.
Yeah. I mean, I've had long gaps of seeing nothing, which I'll tell you. Okay.
I mean, we're not too far from Southend Airport now.
No.
It
was called Rochford Aerodrome in those days. Very small.
Yeah, but seeing planes around was not unknown. I mean,
oh no. I knew the difference between an aircraft and that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're familiar with the things.
Also, I mean, aircraft make a noise. These were absolutely silent.
Even the ones only like 80 yards?
Yes. Yeah. Not a sound.
Wasn't a hissing sound?
No, nothing. Not a thing.
Daylight sightings?
Yes, except for the one at Holbridge, it was the sun starting to go down. Let me see. The same year, I was with my wife at the time, that's Saul's mum, Angie. We were down at Holbridge and we were going to the Smugglers, but we stopped just before the river on the Holbridge Road because there was a a typical Adamski type saucer hovering over the river. It was exactly like you see it in the photograph, with the portholes and the ball landing gear, and it was just literally hovering there.
Where was this exactly?
Hullbridge. Hullbridge is it's about, you know, Rayleigh.
Yes.
Yes, it's about 4 or 5 miles from there, northwest.
See, some people would suggest that those are very similar to German technology from war.
I've heard
Anything
this.
like that? You heard anything?
I have heard such things, yes.
And what do you think about them?
I can well believe it, knowing that, having visited Germany and knowing quite a lot of the people. I mean, they are excellent at construction. And
Which part of Germany were you?
we were stationed in Wiesbaden, and from there we went all over Germany. But
Which part was Germany is that? That would have been West Germany.
I think so, yeah. My geography is not the best.
How do you spell it? Wiesbaden?
W-E-I-S-B-A-D-E-N, Wiesbaden. Baden is...
What gives you any reason to think that German flying saucers would be around?
Having read about the possibility with several authors, and once again, some information.
1960s.
1960s?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think about them being German or anything like that then. It was much later when I started to read a lot more. And when in 1973, when I had my experience on the airbase.
Does this mean that you believe that all UFOs could possibly be German?
No.
No. I mean,
No.
Because I think it sounds like you're going off on a tangent here.
Yes.
What you're saying, you saw this Adamski craft.
Yes.
You had no idea of where this would have come from. At the time.
No, the way it was constructed, I couldn't see a bolt or a screw. It looked like it was made by some other method. It was all like one entire piece, and it was a bluey grey, beautiful looking thing. I mean, it was breathtaking. That's the only time I've ever seen one like that, and I could relate it to the photographs that Adamski took in his book.
But what made you think, when did you feel that they could have been a man-made technology?
Well, I never thought they all could be, just by the photographs in books, the ones I've seen, and a few of the photographs that I've seen which does look like they've got nuts and bolts, like that one I showed you on the wall, put it that way.
And that had that looks like a constructed photograph.
Yes.
And does it say roughly where that was?
I'm not sure. Certainly a part of America and over an American airbase. That's all I know. The origin of where that photograph came from is unknown. It was a friend of mine who gave it to me. And when I looked at it, I'd already seen it on the airbase. I'll tell you the story in a minute. I'll just get to...
Shall we allow Pete to go through chronological
Yes,
order
yes,
of
absolutely,
his
yeah.
experiences,
Yeah,
and then...
Well, I did say it as I was going along. My first one was about 1950. Second one was 1952 to 3. Late 50s at high school. 1961 at the Smugglers. About 62 with my mum and dad in the car. And the same year with my wife Angie at Hullbridge. That was an Adamski style hovering over the river. Now, this is an interesting one. In 1963, I was on my own. I was driving from Southend in my minivan in the early morning, about 6 o'clock. I went up the A127 round the North Circular Road, because there wasn't an M25 in those days, and picked up the M4, I think it was just about built. I was going to Newbury to pick up a steel guitar that had been built for me, and right across my vision as I was driving came very slowly and lazily, this silver disc about the size of a 10p piece, if it was held at arm's length, and as it moved across, it slowly turned, and like it had all the time in the world, it went right across my vision, and once again was heading towards the estuary. And I looked around, I wanted to find another car or witness. Nobody at that time in the morning, nothing. So that's the only one I've had on my own.
It suggests that there may be a landing place here.
It does, doesn't it? I'm trying to think where. Now, one of the other things which I haven't written in here, and I wanted to tell you, was when I was playing with my band at the Smugglers at Holbridge, I was introduced to a guy who was a friend of the landlord's son, and he was an explosives expert. And we were talking about this and that, and he'd been all around the world. He'd been around Wales, Ireland, various parts of England, France, all around Spain, Italy, Australia and New Zealand, creating huge underground caverns. He said after they'd finished, in came the other labourers and electricians and bits and pieces and all that. And I thought that was very interesting because there's never been any mention of that in the papers. And as we... Pardon?
Any idea of where?
Where? He didn't name a particular place, he just told me the countries he'd been to. And I found it interesting because I was then starting to read and hear about underground bases and things like that.
Any idea how these huge caverns were made?
Well, as far as I know, from what he told me, they went into what was already existing caves and used dynamite, I suppose, or something else, and then cleared it all out with huge, great machines. And
it's basically conventional mining.
Indeed, as far as I can tell. Because, as he said to me, you know, he said that after him and his team had done what he had to do, the other experts came in. So they just went off to another site.
Did he tell you which company he was working for?
No, he didn't.
No.
Are these all NATO countries? All based in Europe?
Well, Europe, as I said, Australia and New Zealand. He didn't say anything about Japan or the Far East at all. Maybe they have their own.
Did he imply that these were military projects he was working on for governments or military?
He did imply that, yes.
How did he imply it?
Oh, it's a long time ago.
Any details?
Not really, no. He just said it was for the government, basically. That's nice and vague for you. But that's all I got out of him. Now, the most important one was I was working with a band, and I can't remember the band's name because it was a time when I was working with several at an airbase, American airbase in England, not too far from here. And I was playing my steel guitar with my guitar on my lap, and I used to, in tunes, I would play sometimes the verses on the guitar, and then I'd hop my lead into the steel guitar and play the choruses on the steel guitar. And in the break time, the singer said, right, we're now going to have a short break. And these three guys came up to me, Americans, and one of them slapped me on the shoulder. He said, hey, what part of the States you come from, boy? And I said, I'm not, I'm from South-on-Sea, Essex, mate. And he went, God damn, like that. He said, you play just like one of those guys out of Nashville. And I said, well, that's very, very kind of you. I said, no, I said, I'm Englishman. And anyway, we talked a bit more about music and what we liked and one thing and another. And then it was, I went to the bar and someone passed me a couple of drinks, so I went back down. And then in the next break, as we usually played from 8:30 till midnight, we used to do, we do an airman's club, then we do NCO club, and then we do an officers club. Not all in the same night, but sometimes we'd stay over at the BOQ, called the Bachelor Officers' Quarters. Anyway,
Was it bed borders?
no, it wasn't. I've played at bent borders many times, but no, this wasn't. I'd rather not say, just for safety reasons. So I went up to the bar, and the three guys were there with a couple of other fellas, and I said, listen, you guys questioning me all about music. I said, you fellas fly these really new super aircraft, don't you? And they were going, yep. So I said, tell me something. I said, in your flights, have any of you ever come across any UFOs? Wrong. One of these guys, I'd never seen this before in my life, but his eyeballs shivered. And he started going, well, at this time we feel it, and he came up with this load of like pre-programmed nonsense. Another guy turned his back and went to the bar. Another guy walked off to the side. And within about 2 or 3 minutes, two large black gentlemen with a thing on their arm, like a plastic white thing that said MP on it, which is military police, I assume.
Yeah.
They said, you just got to come along with us, boy. So I said, why? What? They said, just come along with us. That was it. I said, well, I've got my band, you know, I've got to go back. They said, they just got me by each arm, took me through the door to a door marked authorised personnel only, and we went down, and I just never realised these police took me down in a lift. It must have been 5 or 6 floors, and I never realised the air base was that deep. Anyway, we came to a room which they opened the door and ushered me in, and it was a series of long tables. There was about 8 or 9 guys sitting there, and they had what I had never seen before. This is about 1973. They had flat screen computers. Now, I had never seen a computer in 19...
It's only, we've only had the last...
Yeah, exactly. But the main guy who wanted to speak to me, he turned it round to me. He said, this you, Wilshire? I said, yes, it's me. He had my grandparents' name and address, my parents' name and address, what schools I'd gone to, every detail about me. And he started saying, what organisations do you belong to, and what are you questioning these airmen about, and all this. It went on and on. I said, well, look, I said, I'm a musician. I said, it's a hobby of mine, that's all. Just like music is a hobby for your airmen. And he was going, we don't believe that. So anyway, the door opened, and in come this guy, all dressed. He was a retired colonel. He had the cap and all the...
Tired?
Yes, but he loved it so much, they kept him on. He was still there. Well, he was there for the dinner and dance, you know.
Well, that's interesting. We need to talk to you about why you did that. Played with the microphone.
Why I play with the microphone? I had an itch.
Where did you have the itch?
In my shoulder.
Do you want to come back in with
this
a
is
retired colonel?
No,
and
hold
start
on here. You had the itch where?
I did have a little one, just
Yes, but where exactly?
in my shoulder, just
What
there.
part of the shoulder?
Just there.
Right. And you started to talk like that. It's important. Why should have an itch there?
I don't know. One gets these things.
But it's when we mentioned.
I think what Miles is trying to imply that you started to become nervous when you were telling this part of the story.
Okay.
Because it sounds like an interesting part of the story, perhaps, or is there something else?
Not really. No. When he came in, I mean, he, as I say, he had all his medals and all his bits and pieces, and the hat with the braid and all the things, and the guys stood up and he just said, I'm not sure this is right. He said to one of them, he said, are you Wilshire? He says to me. I said, yes, sir, I am. He said to one of the other guys, he said, get me it was something like a BO 251 or something. That's not right. That's just, I made that up. But they gave me this form, gave him the form. He said, right, stamp it. And he got a stamp and he stamped it. And he signed it. And the colonel signed it. He said, I'll deal with this in the morning. And then he said to me, are you staying over tonight? I said, yes, we're at the BOQ tonight. We're doing the NCO club tomorrow. So he said, right, he said, come and have breakfast with me tomorrow. He said, and I'll show you a few things. So I went back to play with the band, and they were curious, but I didn't tell them anything, really.
All you've done is ask an innocent question. Have you seen any UFOs? And then they haul your ass down to the secret underground base, which you didn't know was there, and they fill out a form.
Yeah.
What other technology did you see, or what other things did you see?
Just these,
which looked rather modern.
Not anything I could see really. They had a kind of a television screen, but it looked more like something you'd shine a film onto. It's difficult to go back, you know. It's a long time, 20 odd.
Can you think about things? It was like a three-dimensional screen.
No. It just looked like it looked like a white screen. It was about 3 foot wide by about 5 foot high, and it was behind all the guys on another table. Anyway, long and short of it is that I woke up the following morning, and he showed me where his office was, because when I went upstairs with him, he said, my office is the third door down on the right here, and you've got to go back down one flight, and you'll be in the officers club. So I did that, and the following morning I went to his office and knocked on the door, and he invited me in, and he sat down with me, and he went to a drawer and he got out some photographs. He said, these are gun camera photographs. He said, you know what that means? I said, well, not really, because I guessed. And they were brilliant photographs of all kinds of different kinds of UFOs. There was one that was a bit Adamski-like. A lot of them were flat discs, and 2 or 3 of them were rather like that man-made one that I showed you. And he said, we've been involved with this for many, many years. He said there are only a select number of people who know it all. He said, I'm not one of them. He said, I just know a certain amount. He said, just sort of get the passage of it all. Yeah, photographs. What else did he just told me a few things. He said a lot of the airmen have had encounters. He said I gathered, because I told him what I'd been asking. He said a lot of them have had mid-air near collisions sometimes. He said with things, he said, which are pretty unearthly. But he suggested that there were companies throughout the world who had been experimenting for many, many years with circular craft, which went on a principle, hang on, what's it called? The Mercury engine principle. Ah, that was it. I didn't know what that was until he explained to me about what happens when you put a ring of mercury and put heat underneath it and it spins. Yeah.
Is it red mercury?
I don't know.
Red.
I don't know. Oh.
Okay. Well, I think...
you want to go in?
I think that's time for a theme change.
Okay.
Okay, we'll hold on the red mercury.
Well, as I said earlier, the American pilots came up to the stage and asked me what part of the States I came from, and I grinned and said, no, I'm sorry. In fact, they said, what part of the States you from, boy? And I said, I'm from South-Inland-Sea in Essex, actually. And he said, you play just like one of those guys out of Nashville. And I said, well, that's very complimentary. I said, but I assure you, I'm from Essex. And we talked a bit more about music, and then I was brought a couple of drinks from the bar, and I resumed another half an hour, 3/4 of playing with the band, and then in the next break I went up to the bar, and the 3 guys were there. There was another couple of guys with them, and I started talking to them about, I said, you guys fly these top secret supersonic aircraft? They said, yeah, we do. I said, tell me something. Have any of you ever encountered a UFO? And one guy, the guy I was first talking to, his eyeballs shivered. I'd never seen this ever on a human being before. And he immediately started coming out with something like, well, at this time we feel that, and he went rambling on like on some pre-programmed speech. One of the other guys just turned his back and went to the bar. Another guy went off to the side and came back a few minutes later with 2 military police, 2 tall black guys with MP on a white thing on their arm. And
Is there anything you can remember what that other US Air Force guy said when he started to ramble on or say something? Is there anything?
He said something like, we feel at this time that any discussion with the public about secret aircraft is forbidden, or something. It was something along those lines.
What I'm suggesting is there was something that was said which required you to be brought to the military police.
Well, it was just me questioning airmen about UFOs. I mean, it was a pretty tight security base. And obviously, UFOs were a subject which was obviously discussed among officers and the pilots, but for a civilian, a British civilian like myself, it was obviously completely banned, and I had no idea. I was just following up my hobby.
And this is not too far from Southend.
It is. It's a fair distance. It's about as far as Oxford.
Right. So it's basically.
It's a well-known American air base, but I mustn't tell you. I mustn't. Yeah. In fact, you've still got my discussion with the Colonel, haven't you? You've still got that. Okay.
But the thing is, you were saying earlier that there was a certain time limitation that you had, that you could talk about this. Are you still within that time limitation?
I don't understand.
I think you mentioned something like you couldn't talk about it for 15 years.
Oh yes, he asked me, he said, please don't discuss this, what I've shown you and what we've talked about for about 15 years, and please never mention my name.
Okay, so he said you can't mention the name, you're past the 15-year limit.
Yes. So
you're safe.
I have told a few people, only a few.
Okay.
And
but this is your first time you've said it in front of a camera.
Yes, it is.
And this is for the Basis Project, and it's going to be published on YouTube. Are you okay with that?
I'm fine about that.
Okay. So tell us what then happened. What happened?
Well, after that...
You met with the Colonel.
Yes, the following day.
Redo that bit. We met with the Colonel, and where did you meet him for?
I knocked on his office door, which he'd shown me. It was about 11 o'clock, and we had some lunch, and then he took me back and opened a few drawers and brought out some photographs of what he called gun camera photographs, which I didn't know the expression at the time, but I understand now they were photographs taken by airmen with a special camera attached to guns, I suppose, and some of them were pretty amazing. Some of them were flat discs, some of them were cigar-shaped objects. There was a couple that were what I would call Adamski-like, but they were very clear, very sharp. Most of them looked alien in the fact that they all seemed to be made out of one piece, whereas a few of them appeared to be what I would call nuts and bolts.
This means that the size of the object that you were looking at on the photographs, were these like 10 by 8s?
Something like that, yes. Or
roughly A4 size.
Yeah.
So The size of the object itself that you were looking at, how big were they in the photograph? In terms of filling the size of the photograph?
Nearly edge to edge.
Really up
Yeah,
and close then?
yeah. Or either that, or they took them with a camera that could zoom. You know.
But as far as the photograph is concerned, you had basically a really good look
Oh
at
yes,
what was there.
yes.
So that's how you were able to determine that it was a continuous piece, or one was made of nuts and bolts.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, because I'd noticed before on a few photographs in books that the majority of them, which people call alien, was because we, as far as I know, don't have the technology to make something in one piece like that. There wasn't a weld mark. There wasn't any sign of engineering.
Were these colour photographs?
Yes.
And were there any symbols or any kind of detail that you could recall on these craft?
There was one that appeared to have. It looked like a large elliptical letter 8. It was like but it wasn't quite an 8. It didn't have the top parts of it weren't joined. The circle was a separate semicircle at the top, but I could only see it because it was at an angle, so it was very difficult to determine exactly what that was.
Were there any other details in the photograph which could give you any idea of where they were taken above ground? I mean, obviously above ground, but
not really. No, there was. They were mainly taken in the air.
But so right up and close, there wasn't any other.
No, just cloud.
No, those weren't over a city or something like that.
No.
And were these photos in a file?
They were in a, yes.
And so they were pulled out. Were they? Did they look like they were all the same size, and so they'd been printed for?
For him, I should think. Yes, I've no idea really, to be truthful. But yes, they were of a size, and they were in a stiff card file, which he had to undo the little clip at the front to open it up to get them out.
Was there any classification on the top of the file that said like top secret?
Not a thing.
Any
Not a
words?
thing. Not that I could recall at all.
And was it just photographs, or did you see papers in there as well, along with the photographs? Even if you didn't manage to read those papers, were there any other?
Let me just go back. Not that I can really recall. That particular drawer in his desk were full of other files with lots of papers in. Whether that was a particular UFO drawer or not, I have no idea. But he only showed me the photographs and talked with me about them.
What did they call the objects? UFOs or missile?
Yes, yeah. Craft was his most used expression.
And were they in good condition?
Oh yeah, what the craft of the photographs? The photographs were excellent condition. Yes.
So they didn't look as if they'd been handed around a lot.
Not at all.
Fingered and used. Or
No.
Curled up at the edges. Or
Not at all.
Could we sort of walk through your entry? If you imagine going back there in person now, and sort of you've been invited into an office,
Yes.
and are you seated or are you standing?
I was standing first of all, and then he said, "Sit down." He had a desk, just like a teacher's desk, with a seat on his side and 2 or 3 on the other side, of which I sat in the middle one.
And can you go through kind of in chronological order what he would have started telling you, and then what you remember it finishing up with at the end before you...
Oh, he was kind of jocular at first. He was saying, "I don't know what the hell you're doing talking to those guys about that stuff." He was kind of like quite joking and friendly about it all. He said, "I said I'd show you some stuff, so here it is." And then he got up and he went to the desk. And he showed me things, and he would occasionally say, "What do you think about that?" Or "Look at this." That was it.
Was there anything else in the room which inferred that it was a slightly different technology? You said initially, when you first went that they had things like laptops.
Oh, downstairs. Yes, just the laptops. They what looked like a screen to show film on. That's all I can describe it as. Apart from that,
Was it a different screen than you would, for instance, see in the cinema or anywhere else?
I didn't really even think about it. It was just a white piece of material, about 5 foot by, I don't know, it's smaller than that anyway. Yeah, just a plain white, God knows what the material was, I can't...
Was it different to a normal screen you'd
Not
seen
really.
before? It was just an ordinary projection screen.
That's what it appeared to be.
And what did these other desktop things or laptop things look like? Could you give any further details on that? Did they have a keyboard, for instance?
Yes, it didn't have a keyboard like a computer has a keyboard. It had something like 4 or 5 buttons which could be pressed to access various things.
Now buttons, I'm going to go with buttons with a
Press button.
the mechanical press
Yes.
buttons, like
Yes.
if you wanted to.
Yeah. I'm afraid my attention wasn't so much on that. I was being given the third degree, really. So it was just things I noticed. I didn't see a telephone at all, but a few of the guys had something in their ear without a cable. I remember that. Something in their ear with a little something that just attached to the lobe. That's about all I can remember.
Did they have what kind of uniforms?
They had typical American uniform, the slightly khaki shirt, and matching trousers, really.
Any insignia?
A few of them did.
Like lieutenant or?
I wouldn't know.
Or
No chevrons or anything like that, no.
any name tags on the front or?
I think there were name tags, but honestly, I didn't really pay that attention because, as I say to you, I was being grilled.
So, in other words, in terms of uniform, underneath the base, was there any difference that you would notice between any uniform that you would see above the ground on the base?
No, the guys appeared to be wearing similar things to which the fellows upstairs were wearing. Some of them were obviously on leave and were just in normal clothing. But a few of the guys still had their shirts on. Perhaps they changed their trousers or something, but that's about it.
Was there any other, any sidearms, any
No.
kind of weapons that they had?
Not at all. Not that I noticed, anyway.
In other words, you weren't being held there with guards.
Not at all, no.
You know,
Just a light, a little smaller than that, but just aimed at me, and a gentleman sitting underneath it asking me all these questions.
So you were, in some respects, like we are now. You've got a square light shining down on you. But
It was a
smaller.
round light, I remember, actually, but however,
And they sat you down on
opposite him, at the end of the
a
table.
chair you were sitting on.
A chair, yeah.
Was it? Did it
A
feel-
wooden chair, just a standard wooden chair.
Did they take any samples? Any
Nothing,
fingerprints?
nothing. They knew more about me than I knew about myself, I think.
And again, what did they know about you? They knew that you.
Well, they, as I said, they had my grandparents' names and the address where I was born, which was my mother's father's house. They had my mother and father's name and where he worked, and they had all the schools that I went to.
Are your grandparents indigenous to Britain?
Oh yes. Well, I say that my great-grandparents. A thing I was going to have a laugh with you about when you were telling me about your Irish inheritance. According to my ancestry, I'm apart from English farming stock, I've got Spanish, Egyptian, Jewish, and Irish, which makes me something like Pedro Isis O. Isaacs, I think.
Did you have do you know your blood group by any chance?
No, I don't actually. I've never really had any reason to know that.
So you were shown 10 photographs, 5 photographs?
About 9 or 10, something like that.
I'm curious. When you sort of were speaking to these guys at the bar, how soon was it between being at that bar and being 6 floors down?
Oh, I see.
Questioned?
I was talking to the boys for 2 or 3 minutes before the one that went off came back, and he didn't actually. He came back. There were 2 military police. They weren't exactly with him. He went off slightly to the right, and the military police came towards me. I think he'd pointed me out to them. And then by the time I went down there, I suppose 5 minutes, 6 minutes.
So pretty quick then.
Pretty quick, yeah.
But what happened to you immediately after they told you to come back in the morning? Anything at all?
No, they didn't tell me to come back. It was the colonel who told me. I went up in the lift with him.
Right. How long were you in the lift?
I don't know, a few minutes, as long as it takes to get 5 or 6 floors, really.
But did was there anything at all different about the lift?
Not really.
Were there a lot of buttons on the lift?
No.
How did they go between floors?
I can remember seeing numbers in green and a push button next to each of them.
So was there, in other words, was there a button for each floor?
Yes.
There wasn't one button that selected the floors?
Not apparently. As I say, it's the thing, I didn't take much notice of him because the colonel and I started chatting in the lift, and my attention was really on him.
But how did you divulge that he was retired?
Oh, he told me.
And a retired colonel?
Yeah.
In an active US Air Force base?
Yes, yes. He said quite a lot of us who have enjoyed the work, loved the work, are allowed to stay on or come back every few weeks or something to help and advise people.
When did you go in daylight, for instance? Was there anything?
Yeah, we were in daylight when we came. It must have been 5:30, 6 o'clock on probably an October evening, something. So it was getting gloomy.
So how many were in the band that night that were
playing?
playing?
5 of us.
5. And when you came there, were you being housed for hotel purposes on the base, or did you?
Oh, we were just told that we were. No, we stayed at what was called the Bachelor Officers' Quarters, BOQ.
So you were able to stay there overnight?
That's right.
Okay. When you actually went, did anybody that was part of the band see this incident where you got taken by the military police?
Yes.
They saw it, so they're witnesses to this?
Yeah.
Do you think any of your band members might remember that event?
I can't remember who they are. I know that 3 of them are dead because they're older than me.
I'm sorry, yes.
No, it's all right. No, I can't think. In fact, I think Twiggy's dead. We had one guy called Twiggy. He was 28 stone.
Right.
Our bass player. But no, I think he's passed away.
Did they? When you came? What I'm getting to as well is when you came back, were you allowed to stay on the base that night? When all this had happened, you've been.
Oh yes, I came back and
stayed on the base.
The boys had started without me, but I was basically the band leader, and so they could sing a few songs and do a few things without me. But
so this was prior to you actually getting up on stage.
Oh no, we'd already done one set.
Oh, you'd done one set. This was before the second set.
And it was the guys who, when we said, in fact, the singer said there'll now be a short intermission or something like that. These are the guys that came up and asked me.
During the intermission, but because you weren't actually there on the second half for a song or so.
1 or 2 songs, yeah.
Right, I see. So did the guys ask you,
Yeah, they did. They said, I just wrote it off. I said, they just were complaining about me questioning them and about UFOs. And the boys in the band weren't too interested in UFOs, and they just kind of went, oh yeah, you and your flying saucers. And
so it wasn't an untypical topic for you to talk about.
No.
And you'd been to bases before?
Oh yes.
So you must have remarked in the past about these?
The opportunity hadn't really come because most of the other bases that I played on had a dance floor with tables and chairs all the way around the outside, and a dancing area and a stage with stairs going up to it. So it wasn't so easy for... we were apart, yeah.
What ultimately made you feel why this had happened? Did you feel any reason why me? I mean, all you've done is just pass a couple of casual remarks.
Well, I realised that it was a much more serious subject as far as the Americans were concerned than I had previously imagined.
What about those objects, those 10 photographs, or 8 or 9
Approximately,
yeah. Did any one of those things look familiar to what you'd already seen?
Yes, a couple of them. That one I told you where I was with my mum and dad in the car, and this one went slowly across a field until it went behind the trees. There was one very similar to that. In fact, a couple similar to that. There was one very Adamski-like and one cigar-shaped. But the one I saw with my dad, as I said, was a kind of a browny colour, whereas these were metallic.
And were these the continuous ones, or the continuously formed ones, or were they the nuts and bolts ones?
No, the continuously formed ones.
And what did the nuts and bolts ones look like?
Maybe we can get that picture from my other room, because they look like that, more or less.
Looking at.
Now the thing about this photograph is...
I've got a good shot of it here if you just want to keep it back shot.
The thing about this photograph is...
That's good.
Is that a real photograph, or is it a composite photograph?
As far as I know, it's a real photograph, because this is very similar to one he showed me. And actually, I made a mistake earlier on. There was a couple where you could see buildings below.
Okay.
But only as vaguely as that is.
Where did you get this photograph from?
A colleague gave it to me.
Yeah, it's got disclosureproject.org on it, hasn't it? So it's,
yes.
it's a fairly
are those
recent
being
one.
stuck on then, those labels, or are they part of the photograph?
They're part of the photograph.
Yeah, it's been printed like that.
Yeah.
But
where he got it from, I've no idea.
This was very representational of the type of thing you were shown
Is
by
that
the Colonel.
from the science fiction TV series B?
No.
No. This is. I can tell by looking at that, especially where the light's hitting it, and yeah, you can see it's very. What I call nuts and bolts. There's all these bits and pieces all over it. Where
in some respects, that looks a little bit like some of the Nazi alleged designs from the end of the war.
So you say, yes.
But there's another former military person, a guy called John Irwin, who has witnessed UFOs a little bit like that in the late 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
Nuts and bolts stuff.
Mm.
That was near Syria.
Mm.
Okay.
So there were objects, there were craft in those photographs.
Similar to that,
like
yes.
Now, looking at that particular craft, you said they're similar. What differences are the ones?
Oh, blimey. You're testing my memory now.
Can you think through that?
Take your time.
For instance, that has got a sort of a slight lip on the edge, and
Yeah, a very slight extra section on the top. Let me just think about it. I mean, you can't actually see what I call rivets and nuts and bolts here, but just the way it's constructed, it looks like there must be.
in the same way that if you look at a jet airliner, you know it's not made of one piece of.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good description. A few of them had a glow about them, an auric kind of glow, usually whitish. Some of them had like a red tinge underneath, just like mist.
Right.
That's about it.
So that, and you did you actually see the gun?
Oh yes, in
those pictures,
yes.
with the gun
In most of
Sort
them.
of like, and then
Yeah.
with the,
I think some of the pictures I saw were actually taken by a man with a camera, and he bypassed the gun, I think, but a lot of them had the gun in.
But what did you feel about this? This is shocking.
It amazed me and excited me as well, because it's not something I've ever been afraid of. I've been interested in the occult and mystical things, UFOs and such things, since I was a little boy, since that experience with my mum. You know, so to me it was just reinforcing in lots of ways things that I'd felt and thought about.
Have you had any experiences with anything other than people?
How do you mean?
I'm saying, have you had any visitations or any missing time or events in your life which you can't explain?
No, I've had no missing time. But I know of a band, and I can mention their name, the Moody Blues.
Yes.
My friend Robin Lumley, who is Joanna Lumley's cousin, he and I were great friends and music partners for years. And he introduced me to Graham Edge, who was the drummer from the Moody Blues. And in the early days, when they were just a very up-and-coming rock band, they were coming back in a transit van, as we all used to, from a gig, and the driver could see in his rearview mirror a light following them, quite a light surrounded by a huge aureola. And he said, "There's a hell of a light behind us, guys, following us." And we all turned around and could see it. And then it came over the top of the vehicle and went into a field, a farmer's field, quite a little way ahead, and settled. So the guy pulled up on the other side of the road. It must have been early hours of the morning. And they got out, and 2 or 3 of them went into the field, and the others wouldn't. They were very afraid and stayed right by the van. Then the other 3 just ran out and came back into the van, and they drove off, and they didn't see that thing again. But Graham came round to my house when I lived, pardon me, in Maida Vale, and we talked about it, and he drew some pictures of, oh yes, some little beings came out of it. Very much like the ones you see with the big eyes and the large head and all that kind of stuff. And he drew them on some pieces of paper. And I gave them to Saul, my son, and he still has them somewhere, Graham's drawings.
How was the craft landed? Any details about it? Was it
Not at all. It was dark, it was
or
pitch
anything?
black. It was pitch black. It was just a disc-shaped craft with a cupola on the top, and it just settled into the grass of a field. I didn't get any more details as far as I can remember.
Was this reported? I think Sol told me something about this was actually reported to one of the UFO organisations.
I think it was. I think it was reported to Bufora.
British UFO Research Association.
Yes, yes.
So it may be possible. I mean, I used to be part of Bufora. It may be part of their
So did I.
findings.
And so was I.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the guys from there, Brinsley Lapoa Trench, him and I became really good friends. I visited him at his home in Kensington many, many times, and we went out to lunch lots and lots of times. I learnt a lot from Brinsley, and I really enjoyed his books.
Fantastic. And were you exposed to any further information?
What, from him?
From him.
No, he did speak of. He said he had an inkling that there were UFOs made by. He didn't mention Germany as such, but he said by other countries. He said there were these type of craft being experimentally made.
And this is when? What sort of era?
What do you think? Late 70s. He died in about, I think he died in about 89 or 90, Princey, I can't remember. I've got a couple of his books up there still.
Yes, great. Is he referring to, did he refer to any nations or countries?
No. as far as I remember, he didn't mention a country. He just said he had an inkling that such craft of that kind of design were being experimentally built in various places. That's all he said. I think he wrote about it in one of his later books.
Which one it might be?
Men Among Mankind, I think was his second book. I think it was in there. Maybe. I may be thinking of someone else. I don't know. If I can find it, I'll phone you and tell you.
Yeah. I mean, is there any indication of the, again, it's just because that looks rather like some of the later German versions, is there any information that you would be able to get, reveal or been ever told about established facilities under the earth as opposed to above the earth?
Only what I told you when we were talking earlier is that when I was working with a band at that club called the Smugglers in Holbridge, I was introduced by the son of the landlord to a young man who was an explosives expert. And he had just come back from somewhere, I can't remember where, but he told me that he'd been with a team all over the British Isles and Ireland, and he mentioned Europe and France and Spain, Italy and Australia and New Zealand. And he said he said they actually used most of the time existing caverns, because apparently under the earth are still long lost underground. Well, I don't know. There may be. He'd never mentioned about that, but he certainly did mention that there were man-made, deep underground. What do you? They're not structures. They're lack of structure, aren't they? They're like big spaces, but they caverns. That's the word.
That's the word, right? Okay.
His duty with all his guys was to make them bigger, blast them. And then after him and his team left, the builders and electricians and all the other experts came in, and he was.
On the type of rock. What type of rock were they in?
No idea, honestly. I don't know. Rock from Brighton Rock, quite honestly. No, I don't know. But there's a couple of other things that happened to me, which I think. Before we go any further, I better tell you. One of them was also in the late 70s when I was working with a band. I can tell you the name of this band. It was called Kelly's Eye, which we hoped we would get to #1, but we didn't. And Tony Kelly and myself and two other guys were travelling in a car going down the A40, I think before the M40 was built, down to Maidstone in Kent. And we were about halfway, and I just glanced over to my right to say something to the driver, and this large light, like a large disc with a big flare around it, came from my left, went over the car and slowed down quite a bit in a field next to us, and we pulled over and got out the car just to watch it trailing off into the distance. And there is no question about the fact that it was not a standard aircraft of any description whatsoever. This was unearthly. There was that. And the last one...
Sorry, just before you get on.
Yes, go on.
Have you got any identification of what it was looked like? Or?
All I can say was it was like not a sphere, it was a fat disc which glowed so brightly you can only just about make out the fact that it was a disc. So there was no way I could possibly see any insignia or anything at all.
I mean, has there any remnants, maybe something re-entering from space?
No, it came from my left at above treetop level. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
That's all I can tell you. The other one was actually in 1975. I took my first trip to America, and I was with my friend Jerry, and we were travelling from New York to Nashville. I've been to Nashville several times since, but this was the first time. And we were going by coach, and we stopped at a Holiday Inn halfway because it was a long journey. And once again, just as we were getting out of the coach, this thing came across from way over and went right across the top of the coach in the hotel and went off into the distance. And that was very much a disc shape, not quite as glowing as the one I've just told you about. And that went, and the people were all going, wow, and they were all pretty amazed. And my friend Jerry is very much a materialist, and he said, well, I've never seen anything like that in my life. So I said, well, you know me, Jerry, I said, I've been looking at these things for a long time. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when we got to the hotel and had something to eat, we went up to our room and put the television set on, and there was a UFO flap had been going on for a week in that area, and that one was reported, along with other ones were reported, and interviews with people who'd seen them. I also saw an interview with Barney and Betty Hill. You remember? Right. I'm not sure if it was that hotel or
the first
couple. Yeah, it was a black guy and a white girl.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a pretty special occasion, wasn't it? I'm not sure exactly whether that wasn't the same night. It was later, another time. And that's
about a year or two, or what?
Yeah, I think it was probably late 70s.
Right. You've seen a lot of objects.
Yes, I have.
And
not for long enough, I'm afraid.
Not for long enough. But do you think that anything else happened other than just seeing these objects?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure they had destinations and they had things to do.
Why are you sure?
Well, because I can't see why there would be the construction of such an incredible device without there being a purpose to its flight. They may be, a guess. They might be on their way to abduct someone. They might have abducted someone. They might be on their way from an underground base or to an underground base or from a much larger craft in space, which I have heard there is.
Now, have you had any thoughts as to why you were actually briefed on those UFOs in the underground part of that base that you were at?
I think the colonel liked me, and as I explained very carefully to him, it was a hobby, and I seemed trustworthy enough to him to obey his instructions as to not discuss it with anyone for 15 years and never to mention his name. I think, yes.
Yeah.
I have.
So how many years ago would it be again that happened?
What, 1973 to 4?
Right. That's a long time now.
It is, especially for an old fellow like me.
So have you had any further major experiences like this?
No. Oh, well, yes, I have had. Last year and the year before, standing outside here in Canvey Island, I was with my lady Victoria, and unfortunately, because of her lack of sight, she couldn't see this with me, but I was standing there facing that lot of ivy over there, and I was, lovely clear night, I was looking at the moon and the stars, and over from, where were we facing? Over from the west came two disc-shaped objects that were blue on top and green underneath. That's the way they appeared. And they came quite slowly and stopped, I would think, just over the estuary. Seems a popular place. Then another one came from behind me, which would be from the north, I suppose, came and joined them. And then coming up from the estuary, another one joined them, a fourth one. And then I was calling to Vicky. I said, Vicky, come and try and see if you can see this. And she just couldn't make it out at all, which is a great shame. There was no one else to call on. And they drifted off down towards the Thames estuary. And I saw something similar to that.
So they came from different places and then they grouped.
Yeah, they grouped together apart, you know, but and then they flew off as if someone had pressed one button and they all went together, you know. That's quite interesting.
But that lasted how long? Like a few seconds or a minute? Or?
Yes, I think the whole episode must have lasted about a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
And they would have then disappeared down the estuary. That would have taken them to Holland?
I would have thought so, yes. Yeah, Holland or Belgium, yeah. But no reports in the papers or anything like that. So
yeah, I think the papers these days have a tendency. Well, we'll leave that out.
yeah, except for I must say the Star is a very good. It has once a fortnight. It has a kind of a UFO section where anyone sending any photographs, videos, anything, you know.
Have you ever reported any of your life's sightings to London UFO Studies?
No.
That would have been the local one here.
No, the only people I've ever reported it to are you two gentlemen here.
Wow.
I've told, as I say, a few close friends who are interested in the subject.
Yes.
And I've given them the caution that I was told. I said, you know, this happened, and, you know, usually over a drink in the pub or something like that. That's about it, really.
Have you ever been abducted by aliens?
No. Not that I can remember.
Your son Sol mentioned to me something about Edwards Air Force Base.
He was wrong.
So he's made a mistake there?
Yes, he has.
Right, okay. So you've not had any encounters with people
No,
or UFOs?
No.
He's
Edwards
just made a
Air Force
mistake.
Base is in America, and it's a very strategic place.
Yes. Okay, I just wanted to
No.
check because...
My dear son, God bless him, he does tend to exaggerate for a start, and he tends to get his facts wrong.
Well, he's got a few facts wrong, but he got some very interesting facts right about the story, but I think he's just putting the wrong places to the wrong times.
Yeah.
And
maybe it's because he's read a lot about Edwards Air Force Base, where he hasn't read anything about the base that I was on.
Yeah. Well, I think he's trying to relate your experiences, which obviously he's not going to know as well as you are. So he's obviously made a couple of little errors there. But I mean, going back to with these things which he you described them as like flat screens. Can I just ask you, were they actually holding these in their hands?
No,
They
they
on
were
the table?
on a table in a little stand, a little.
So they were standing upright on a table?
Slightly at an angle.
Right, and did they have any wires coming out of them?
Not that I noticed.
Right, so they were self-powered.
Well, I don't know, because where they were sitting on the table, they could have had a hole in the table and wires could have gone
Through
under.
the stand,
I've
that's it.
no idea about that. No idea.
That's interesting. And would you say as well, did you see anything on these screens? Were you able to...
No, I couldn't see anything on anyone else's screen at all. It was in very small print or whatever it was, and the only one was when the guy who questioned me turned that round to me and showed me my grandparents and my parents and all the other bits and pieces.
Was it text or was it pictures?
What's that? Picture, text only.
Text only?
Yes.
So you never saw any graphics?
No.
And how would you describe the image? Was it like a computer screen of today? Was it white and then black writing? Or would you describe
No, it was actually pale yellow and black writing.
So it was a pale yellow background?
Very pale.
And black writing?
Yes.
Yes. So possibly not colour image, not a colour screen then, would you say?
Whether it could take colour or not, I've no idea. But what I saw was just merely that.
The yellow. Okay. And in terms of, they say, they showed you this, can you remember whether or not it was detailed letters or was it like a calculator type screen?
No, it was letters. It had my grandparents' names and my parents' names and the address I was born at, which I left when I was 2 years old with my mum and dad and went to move to Warrior Square, which is where I went with my mum on my first one I told you about, where we went to the pharmacy and saw the one up in the sky.
Right. So when he was showing you this screen, did he sort of go from one screen to another screen with more information?
Not at all, no. He just showed me that and for a few seconds and that was it. And then he started questioning me.
Right.
Pretty heavily.
So you just saw briefly names and, a few details. That
And he said, we've got your mum, dad, grandpa, and all the schools you went to, so. What organisations do you belong to? And I didn't belong to any, really.
What I'm trying to ascertain is, I don't know if you understand me. You know, like a calculator has like a very basic set of numbers that are made up of squares.
Yes.
Would this screen be like that, like a calculator type of text?
Not at all.
Or was it actually like a computer screen? They were very smooth edged fonts, curved letters, looking like print.
Just looked like print.
So it was a screen of some type as opposed to a LCD like.
I think we're possibly looking at maybe an early form of LCD
screen.
technology.
Early LCD screens. Yeah, okay.
I don't even know what that means.
Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a good feel for what we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
And okay. Can we ask you what sort of age you would have estimated this colonel to be, if you had to guess?
73, 74.
Right.
But very eloquent and very American.
So 74.
Approximately, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 30 years on. Chances
He
are
was grey. He was grey. He had all his
quite
hair.
elderly now, isn't he? If he's still around.
Oh, yeah, he'd have gone by now, I would have thought.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, good afternoon.
Oh, that's good.
what's the...
Well, one of our lights has decided to start not working. So why don't we...
How is it doing that? Because it's a bulb, isn't it?
no, it's an LED display.
Oh, it's LED.
Yeah, but all the bulbs are flashing.
Do that.
I think I've told you as much as I can.
Yeah.
I think if we had a if we have a little tea break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I was talking about this gentleman, Johan Konya, and all I can say is he did have a more than pleasant way about him. Very kind, very gentle, very soft-spoken, and he knew a lot about UFOs and related phenomena.
How was he met? How did you meet him? How did
How did I meet him? I don't remember. That's the truth. I don't remember how I met Johan at all.
Why alien? Why does a nice man have to be alien?
Why does a nice man have to?
Be alien.
Yeah, I didn't say he was alien. It's just that other people, a bit more gullible than myself, I think, probably, they were convinced that he was, and I suspected he may be. But apart from that, he never made any admissions.
What I'm looking for is anything in the eyes or skin.
His skin was flawless, perfect. His eyes were blue.
Blonde hair.
Blonde hair, yes. And he looked like he never had to shave. I never saw any mark on his face. It's one of the things I noticed, that he'd ever had a beard or anything. His hair was blonde, not white, blonde.
Honey blonde.
Yeah. Was he tall?
A little shorter than me.
What about the hands?
Lovely, long, graceful fingers. Very much a musician's fingers in lots of ways. But he wasn't a musician, as far as I know.
Okay, I think Matthew wants to ask about...
Just in closing,
why you?
Why were you picked, do you think, by the colonel to receive this information?
I wasn't picked by him.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that he said to me in the lift, or in fact he said to the guy who was questioning me, he said, look, he said, my wife's upstairs there, and this is supposed to be a really good band, and I hear that without this guy it doesn't happen. So that's when he asked for that form and one thing another, and you know, he when we talked in the lift, we arranged that I would knock on his door in the morning, and he would show me something. That was it. And why? I mean, he could have just written it off. So that's quite right, but he chose to, I suppose, satisfy my curiosity as much as he possibly could.
Do you think it was because he was a retired colonel that he was trying to impart this information to you?
Yes, I do.
And do you find it at all curious that somebody from the military would impart what sounds to me like a secret, you know, a secret that's been kept by the military. Otherwise, we'd all see these photos. Why the secrecy being given out?
Well, okay. He never imparted what I think were secrets in the strict sense of the word, because as you can see by that photograph I showed you, a lot of photographs like that have been in books and magazines now over the last 20 years. So I don't feel that he was offering me anything which was dangerous to the USAF at all.
Mm-hmm. I mean, without revealing the location of where the airbase was, do you feel that this airbase would have had the latest type of aircraft that were available to the United States Air Force? Do you feel that...
I saw no sign of that.
So it wasn't necessarily a frontline base that would have had things like the U-2 spy plane, the SR-71 Blackbird. I think
no.
Slightly
in plain sight. They wouldn't have them hanging out that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't that sort of...
In fact, I must be honest, I didn't see any aircraft when I was there, as far as I can remember.
Right. It had an airstrip, this base.
Yes, I think on the road going towards it, I think we could see an airstrip and the odd aeroplane from a distance, but that was about it.
I'm just wondering about... my curiosity is that certain air bases have certain things that are very advanced, and when people start asking questions, that sometimes there will be an attempt to diffuse people's interests in various ways, either by threats or by maybe leading people astray.
Well, I did feel that I was about to be threatened by the man downstairs until the Colonel stepped in and rescued me, really.
Possibly he saw that and he came in.
Yes, it just...
Do you think, in the lift shaft, you had a rather longer journey in the lift shaft than...
No, not really, no. You know, we just shook hands, and he said, he was laughing, or saying, hey, you know, you asking all these questions about UFOs and so and so and so and so, and then by the time he'd finished what he was saying and I'd replied, we'd come to the floor, and he then pointed where his office was and pointed which way I should go to get back to the stage.
In other words, you weren't taken somewhere in the base when you weren't sort of like flash hypnotized in some way and
no
taken somewhere for a longer period of time.
No, not at all.
There's nothing at all different.
No, I can't alter. What
Well,
I told you is
he would have been gone too long to come and play back in the
absolutely
in the band.
Yeah.
So it was a short
I
period
think
of
they'd
time.
done 2, maybe 3 songs, and I just climbed back on the stage, picked up my instruments, and carried on with them.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for giving your time, and
More than welcome.
if people have any questions, we may forward them on to you from they're sort of watching this on YouTube.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Here, so each string has got its own bridge,
Right.
if you understand, so that if I want to change the shape like you would with the guitar, you change your finger position.
Yeah.
I do it with the pedal.
All right.
I might go, and so on.
Is this a music instrument from the States or was it?
No, originally from Hawaii.
Ah.
And it was an acoustic guitar. I haven't got one in the room. Oh, yes, I have. Well, it was like that, but like a Spanish.
Like that?
No. That's my Martian cricket bat.
All right.
Like a Spanish classical guitar, rather like that shape with 6 strings on it. And it was I think it was an American sailor who left a Spanish guitar out in the sun and went off on the ship and left it in Hawaii. And the sun hit the fingerboard so hard that it warped it, and the strings became too high to play. But it was a young Hawaiian lad who who got hold of it and tuned it to a chord like this. Right? And then he got I think his mum or his grandma or something, they used to make jewellery, and he got a piece of, I think it was glass, and it's now these days turned into one of these.
Held across all of the strings.
And yes, and so let me just find a nice Hawaiian kind of chord.
Oh yeah.
And that's how the Hawaiian guitar was born. And then years later, I think it was Americans certainly again got hold of it and said, well, if we had more strings we could have a cleverer chord. And then it was another guy, it was an aircraft engineer in fact, who said, well, if we put some pedals on the floor and attach it the way it is now, we can change the chord. So its range is fantastic. You can go from like right up into beyond the violin register, and you can go down to the bass register. You can get like
Wow.
I'm glad you asked me to do this because it's made me tune it up.
A really amazing, rich sound, isn't it, when it's
when
it's played?
It's beautiful, you know. And you hear all the country things like. And such like.
That is true. That's true country there.
Yeah? You can get some clever chords, you can get like. Things like this is this one. Really nice.
Are there any music specifically written for it apart from country music?
Not written for it, because most of the people who play this can't read a note. It's not written. I mean, I've played this with a jazz band. I've played it with pop music, all kinds of things, all kinds of people, all kinds of things, because I always pointed out to various producers, just because you hear a guy play country music on this, it doesn't mean it's all it can do. It can do other things. You can play.
And on a conventional guitar, you have a handle. I think that they.
Oh, that's for this. That's all it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. A tremolo arm, it's called.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah. All it does, as you shake it, it moves the bridge, and so the note you play goes. Hank Marvin used to use it all the time.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. He shifted in and out.
Another old pal of mine.
Oh yeah.
Lives in Australia now.
All right.
Yeah, we were good old pals.
Well, excellent. Thank you.
Did you film any of that?
Yes,
Yeah.
we filmed.
Filmed all of it. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Did the
If
whole-
you want to carry on though, if there's something you want to.
No.
No.
I was just thinking of
Pete? Do you want to play us out of the bases?
no. Things like you don't often hear like people think about the blues like. You hear country music, you don't hear that.
Yes.
And I wish I could get this bloody thing into you. Got it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can go. I can even get down to there, you know. Some nice chords like. Things like that, just little bits and pieces. If I had a copy of one of my albums, I'd give it to you. But what I'll do,
Well, why don't you actually had a, I think, you could explain, before we started, could you explain what this is?
solo albums I had is this one called Steel Seasons, and I was asked to do it by Pi Records in those days. And the person who designed the front thought they'd put because it's called a steel guitar, a lot of people think it's made of steel, but this is called the steel. This is the thing you play it with. It's a piece of polished steel. But I did all kinds of, I composed a few of them, but a lot of them are to do with different times of the year. And this very nice Polish girl did some embroidery and has the top of the steel guitar on it, and it's got the summer, the spring, the winter and the autumn all in it. So it's and on the back is a picture of me in my hairy days.
Oh, fantastic. Is that the same instrument there?
No, that was one called driftwood. I used to build, I didn't build them, my friend Jerry Evenden, who I went to Nashville with, I think I told you, when we had the UFO come over the coach. He was a metal engineer, and I taught him to play the steel guitar, and we talked about it, and I said, you know, Jerry, you could build one of these. He said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to try. So we got together and we took his steel guitar to pieces and we made some improvements, and we got the driftwood steel guitar. We made about a dozen, no more than that, about 15 we sold, including a left-handed one. And then finally I was offered this by Ronnie Bennett, who is a superb steel guitar player and also a marvellous engineer. So this is the Bennett steel guitar, my special custom 14-string nightmare. I mean, if it doesn't sound good, it doesn't knit a nice pair of woolly undies for the winter.
Well, thank you. Thank you very
right.
much. Thank you.
More than welcome.
Is there any final thing you want to say about your opinion about UFOs and your experience?
My opinion, I do believe that there are some which come from other parts of the universe, and I believe that there are many that are manufactured here. I have read a lot of the ancient texts like the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana and the other ones, and I've heard about the original people who came, and in fact even in Genesis it mentions them. Jehovah is actually a race of beings called the Yahweh. That's the right pronunciation for it. So they were one lot who had their little Garden of Eden here. The others were the Elohim, which you may have heard of, I'm sure. They were a race which had genetic sciences. And the most recent ones that were here were the Nephilim, from which most of us are descended. I just wish...
Most of us? What do you mean
a
by
lot
that?
of us. A lot of us.
So there are different humans here.
Yeah, but
Or non-humans.
no, we're all human. We've all got the same organs in the same place, except for the girls, of course.
Yes.
And you know, I just wish you know, all the different arguments and things that go on between religions and wars and things. If only people studied the ancient things, they would see that it's all about madness, really. It's, you know, because we belong to the universe.
That makes us extraterrestrial.
Yes, originally, yes. I think they find worlds or do things to various planets to make them habitable, and I think the scientists of today have been discovering them with telescopes and probes, and they're finding the appearance of Earth-type planets.
Who's the they?
The they, astronomers, scientists.
You said your they earlier was, you know, they came here. Or
What's that?
The people.
Yes, there were races of beings that came to Earth who had a genetic science, and we are the result of some of it.
Is this what you've read, or is this what you believe?
It's things I've read and things that just seem so obviously true to me that it's become part of my beliefs. Yes.
Is this why that general or colonel gave you that information to tell us?
I don't think that was. I don't think that was on his mind. It may have been.
He gave you a 15-year timeline to tell us.
Yes. Yes. Maybe he knew. I'm sure. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he knew things that I don't know. But he seemed to be aware that certain things would be revealed over the course of time.
There certainly was a UFO explosion in the media in the 90s, so which would time up well with a 15-year non-disclosure from the 1975 period.
Yeah.
So.
Who knows? Who knows?
Well.
This is update number 16. We're just getting on with things here. Haunted Skies. We've managed to interview John Hansen once again. Now, the first time we interviewed John Hansen, we interviewed him a long time ago for Basis 3, which is still in edit. And the reason why Basis 3 is in edit is because we can't get a resolution to what's going on there. But we promise that as soon as we get ourselves set up in new facilities, that we will edit Basis 3. Basis 3 concentrates on the Butler report with Brenda Butler, and also now finally we got an interview, a short interview with Dot Street, who's a co-author with Brenda of Sky Crash, which is authored by Jenny Randalls. Now, Jenny Randalls, for whatever reason, actually ensured that that book was censored by the Ministry of Defence. And censorship. Why? Why censor something about effectively a lighthouse? Well, this is a major incident at the Rendlesham Forest UFO events, and basically virtually all, if not everything to do with the British witnesses has been silenced or ignored. In fact, it's been said by certain individuals that the Rendlesham Forest UFO events was an American issue with American servicemen, and that's it. Well, it happened on British soil. The events are still happening. Colonel John B. Alexander admitted to me in a Basis Fast Blast backroom interview a couple of years ago that the area where those two bases are, the Woodbridge and Vent Borders bases, is a very hot area for all sorts of things. Now, it seems, basically, before I sidetrack myself again, that we're dealing with reality management here, and that's what I want to focus on. But we've got this interview with John Hansen, and he publishes this very good book, series of books, which people should try and get the books. These books are really good books, and the other books, Encounter in Rendlesham Forest and You Can't Tell the People, these are the kind of books that people need to see, to actually physically have them as paper, as opposed to the downloaded version. On the back here, you've got a series of the, if I can see myself do this, of the other volumes. Now, it's interesting from my own perspective that's on the front page of this is a two-sphere UFO linked by a central column. Now, that's the sort of thing we were investigating in the Irish UFO Research Centre way back in the 1970s in Belfast in Northern Ireland, where these kind of things were being seen then. Mind you, this is 1978, so the kind of things which we were having flying around Northern Ireland were flying around in the early 70s. And having a report here in 1978 is quite interesting to see that kind of device. Anyway, John Hanson and co-authored with Don Holloway. This is sort of a life's work that he's doing, and it's a really excellent series of books. That's the promotion over, but really we should try and support these guys by buying the books. And okay, we'll have them as a resource. It's useful to have them physically on paper, because these computer things may not be around come an EMP or some kind of thing like that. And anything, once it's electronic, can be deleted or modified. And we have to check for that, because that's the trap. Once it's up online, they just need to change certain facts. It's very much easier to do it. Once something's printed, you can't do that. Well, one fine day, I'm walking through the forest at Rendlesham, and a man with a book walks past. What's in the book, and who are we talking to?
Right, well, you're talking to John Hanson, who's now the publisher of the Haunted Skies books, and took over the publication of the books themselves, starting with volume 7, which is much increased from the previous volumes. That was in black and white, as indeed the earlier ones were. Well, we decided to increase the size of the book with volume 9, and also to introduce colour, not forgetting, of course, volume 8. Volume 8 is in colour, and half of the book, I think it's something like about 560 pages.
What is Haunted Skies?
Haunted Skies is the name. Is the name.
Did you start this or what? What's this whole?
Well, I started all this back in 1995, actually, because when I was just retired from the police force, a gentleman, an officer, a police officer, told me about a sighting in Birmingham. He'd been directed to it as a result of what he'd seen. That triggered off, some people would say an obsessive, others would say an insane curiosity into investigating the UFO subject.
I mean, this is shared by Gary Heseltine?
I think Gary...
He's a different police force, though, wasn't he?
Well, he was British Transport Police, and I was in the West Midlands Police. We're both in CID. As I say, I've not had a lot to do with Gary. I certainly...
But I mean, the important thing, it's two credible, intelligent people involved in official investigations, drawing their credible intelligence, thinking process through UFOs.
Well, absolutely. If there's one thing that over 30 years of policing does, it certainly gives you an idea, certainly whether people are fabricating or whether people are being honest. The majority of people, and I mean near enough the majority that I've spoken to over the years, are certainly, in my opinion, honest. They've got, in some cases, much to lose by having the courage to tell her what they've seen. But overwhelmingly, there are thousands upon thousands. We're actually drenched with sightings. Unfortunately, most of those sightings are not brought to the attention of the public. And as I've always said, there's a vast difference between the files that the MOD declassify and that the public have read online and what we actually published in our books.
Yeah.
And all I ask is that the reader...
These are pretty serious books.
Yeah, all I ask is that the reader takes the opportunity to read through the books. If they have any criticisms, or if they can suggest any additional ways in which we can improve the books, well, we'd be absolutely grateful. But we've been thorough, and particularly, I suppose my favourite was Volume 8, which was the Rendlesham Forest incident.
Where we are now.
Where we are now.
We're in the
5
car
past
park
10.
at the
Yeah,
Rendlesham
5 past
Park
10.
incident.
Or I should say 10 past 5, and I really haven't had a great deal to drink. On the 21st of September, the reason why myself and my partner Dawn came down was because there was a conference arranged at Felixstowe by Derek Savory, and Dr. Jonathan Reed extolled us with his version of those events, which are absolutely fascinating.
Now, what connection has Jonathan Reed got with Rendlesham? Or he just
Well, he has got any connection with Rendlesham, but Derek Savory, who's organised it, is the guy that is a friend of Brenda Butler's, and him and Brenda have been coming down into the forest for a number of years, and Derek has had some incredible experiences himself, not forgetting over the years the number of apports of stones that are being witnessed.
That's the stones which
That's the stones, yeah, and some amazing images. But for me personally, those images are certainly they're exceptional ones. They defy belief, but I can't say what they are. I cannot say because I don't know.
What sort of images? These ghosts or
Well, that's right. The streaks, the images that certainly closely resemble humanoid and also human faces. So, some people would say they refer to them as ghostly images, but whether or not that phenomena, which is still ongoing, can be associated with the events that took place in Rendlesham towards the end of December 80 is another matter, and of course not forgetting the film that we took on December the 27th 2000, and that the stills from that film are contained in, I think it's one of the volumes. What happened there, what was filmed there, which was exceptional, and that was over the same field, the same location where Larry Warren saw his UFO. That object is identical to objects that were seen over the Sizewell nuclear power station a few months later.
Is Sizewell near here?
Yeah, just up the road from here. But I mean, apart from that, with our Volume 8, we had an awful lot of help from Colonel Holt. And again, there's a great deal of information in Volume 8 from Colonel Holt himself that has never been, certainly he's never made available to anyone else, and he's been, as I say, very, very, very helpful.
Is he saying it was a UFO? Or there were
he's not saying he's not committing himself. There is so much to do with that particular case. There's so many different answers to it. Me personally, I tend to go with the possibility that it was an earthbound satellite or something like that. Certainly Chris Pennington. I mean, Chris Pennington, who was Brenda's ex partner, he's very heavily in favour of the satellite explanation. And
in other words, that must have re-entered into the sea, though. I mean, it couldn't have just landed here.
It maybe well did. It maybe well did land in the sea. There is photographic evidence available that shows something landing in the sea, and also something being winched onto the back of a helicopter.
And there was a fleet, the shipping fleet was all told.
That's right, and also the local prison was put on it. So I think we all know that something landed, and there are a lot of stories
on
alert. Yeah.
Unless it was a manned landing. Why put a prison on alert for something coming in?
That's right, but the one thing that I remember with clarity, apart from, because there is so much to remember, is that when Brenda and Dot went to the airbase to meet up with Squadron Leader Donald Morland, he thought they were from the MOD, so he chatted freely with them for some time, and then said, "Oh, the UFO case, I'll get the files." So he took the files out of the cabinet, he showed them the files, and he said to them, some of the airmen said they'd seen what they referred to as an angel. And that is generally forgotten about, but that was said to them. And at that stage, he realised they were not from the MOD, and he kicked them off the base. So
that's a slight.
Well, about what?
That's a bit instead of a mistake there?
Well,
Or base commander?
Well,
Tom, Dick, or Harry?
that's right. But I also firmly believe, as Brenda does, without identifying the informant, that photographs taken of the landing site, and I cannot say which day it was, I mean there's so much controversy about the days, but those photographs were available, and they were with a senior officer, and those photographs were sent out.
Are we talking about the landing site over at the north gate over there?
Well, that is a well. There are so many. I think within our book we identified 8 different
At the end of the runway
sites.
here, just on the left,
Today
with the
you've been shown the recent, the up-to-date landing site by John Burroughs, which we looked at. And also, as I say, there's a number of others around this.
I think total of 8. No.
8 or 9. I can't remember offhand, but there are so
Is that
many.
8 or 9 landings, or one landing?
Well,
and 8
you
different
know,
places?
I mean, you look at the so-called landing site, as it's referred to, involving Colonel Holt. I see that all mention of his name, and also Jim Penniston's has been removed from that landing site. And you saw today, as I did, they put a large notice up telling people about what happened there all those years ago, not identifying the dates or now relating that particular site to anybody specifically.
That's the site where the tree appeared. The local space-time changed for like 2 weeks, and there was a grown-up tree there for 2 weeks. Then
Well,
it all
that's
switched back.
that's what's claimed, yeah. But that, and as you know, as I understood from Brenda and from my information from people here with the Forestry Commission, the site referred to as, which we know as Colonel Holt's area, or from where he saw the UFO from, that was going to be the venue for the fabricated model of a UFO which the Forestry Commission were going to install and then open that area as a children's playground. That hasn't happened so far, but as Brenda's mentioned so many times, look, 33 years ago there were no tracks, there were no little trails.
Yeah, this is very important for anybody coming now, that all these tracks,
they were not there, and these areas of forest that are being chopped out and posts put in and tacky notices about UFO trails. In some way that is information to people who don't know about what happened, but actually it works against it, doesn't it?
yeah, it's disinformation.
It's
steering
disinformation.
information mismanagement.
It is, yeah.
And the numbers given to these tracks has also
Well, they've all been
changed.
changed over the years. In fact, it's very confusing, isn't it? But some very mysterious things have happened here, and there was an awful lot of British witnesses that saw some very strange things a few
Now,
days.
that's important because there's been statements made as an American
Well,
case.
well, of course,
the British should stay off.
yeah. I mean, we tracked down the police officers involved, and there's copies of their diary in the in Haunted Skies, and there isn't many that we haven't tracked down. One of the officers himself had a sighting at Woodbridge when he was on duty. That was 1981, and all we've sought to do is record the social history of what people have seen and experienced, and then perhaps leave the reader to make up their own mind whether, based on that evidence, what they think of it. It's occasionally we've voiced a subtle opinion, but generally we leave it to the reader to decide, and we hope that people will be inclined to buy the books, mainly because we don't make money out of the books.
Yeah.
We do not make money. Each book costs us something like nearly £1,000 to typeset, and it's done in colour and it's done properly, and you will not see anything else like these books anywhere else.
And when your computer goes down, you've still got these to read.
Well, that's right. That's
But
one
there's
way
the
of looking
electronic
at it.
version,
I mean,
this is packed full of information.
This is sorry. Well, we haven't. Sorry, we're looking at this one here, but actually, that's volume 9, and that relates that there is quite a lot of information in there relating to a guy called David Daniels,
The
the reptilian guy that met up with Brenda and Dot. And as you
stayed in Brenda's house.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, we're pretty sure that we tracked him down to Hawaii some 15 years ago. We do have all the names in the books, and he.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, he actually. There are allegations that as a result of meeting him, the persons involved complained of having feeling a pinprick on their shoulders and finding some strange marks on their shoulders afterwards. Now, it doesn't automatically mean they were given implants by him, because I can't say that, but all I'm saying is what they've told me, and there's no reason to refute that.
And he shape-shifted.
Brenda's the only one that has seen him do this, but the amazing thing about David Daniels is that he was taken by Brenda to meet the Lord Hill Norton at the MOD. I mean, for an Admiral of the Fleet to meet up with David Daniels and be far more interested in David Daniels and his story than he was in Sky Crash.
Do you think they're watching?
Yeah.
The drones.
Brenda and Dot, are you saying that this British case is got nothing to do with Britain?
Yeah, that's what we've been told by the Americans. This has to do with the Americans, it's nothing to do with the British people.
Excuse me, it happened on British land.
Yeah, it did, and also...
Not military or the base or anything, it was on forestry land it happened.
And there was loads of British witnesses, and
Yeah.
Colonel Holt has actually admitted that, the British witnesses, and they were interviewed, so... And we've got 2 British witnesses come forward just recently, who went on at the Probe conference. I'll bring that up.
Can I just say, Brenda, that you did document through me a lot of those British witness sightings
yes.
In chronological order,
Yes.
a few days before the incident and for days or weeks after.
Yes,
but
right.
nobody seems to be interested in that at all, you know.
I'm interested in it.
Well, the other
I want to expose that for the Basis Project and
Well,
Basis 3.
The other thing is, Miles, too, I advertised it in the paper in about 1981. I put a piece in the paper and I said, have anybody seen anything over the Woodbridge area, Bentwaters area, to do with the December 1980? And that was before anybody ever brought it out, and I put it in the paper. And I've got those newspaper cuttings to prove that I put it in the paper. And yet people says that I didn't advertise it. The News of the World was the very first newspaper. It was not.
See, we didn't want the News of the World to go out, did we?
No, we didn't.
Because that was bloody Harry Harrison.
But you're now saying there's 8 landing sites of the interdimensional time-travelling spacecraft.
No, we've been told there's 8, Miles, by different American witnesses, and that they said that, well, altogether we've been taken to 8 different sites, but as far as we know there's only 1 or 2.
But before I started filming, you were saying that you seemed to distress one of the Americans in some way.
Oh,
He told you to...
No, that wasn't on the American.
That wasn't American, that was a British person who told me to F off. That was one who was to do with the conferences that's going on.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it was,
Exactly,
yeah.
it is. I'm not surprised.
because it's not a British case, it's an American case.
Yes, and I was told in no uncertain terms that it's nothing to do with me.
British land,
Yeah.
Americans involved,
Yeah.
plus British civilians involved.
Yeah, it was
Remember
loads,
the lass
yeah.
with her dog?
Yeah.
It flew over her place, didn't it?
That's
and
right,
the dog
yeah.
died with shock.
No,
Remember
there's a
that?
lot. There's
That's
a lot
Gordon
of
Levitt.
That was Gordon Levitt.
That was Gordon Levitt.
I can't, it was last, wasn't it?
But we did have an
remember.
interesting development a few months ago, thanks to yourself and Ronnie Dugdale, because, well, you know the story about that Ronnie was handed a piece of metal which was claimed to have been found
Yeah.
by a lady on the day after the, well, we don't know which particular day, but certainly she claimed that the metal, this lump of metal, was found the day after she had walked around the landing site. Now, quite a number of people you spoke to that has been round the so-called landing site, and none of that information's really come out. But that metal was analysed in the States. It was analysed by a guy called Nick Reiter, who's a scientist, who sadly passed away from cancer last year. But Nick was able to establish that the analysis conducted on that piece of metal was identical to a UFO that was seen over Ohio in 1973, which also dropped some of this metal, and currently we're hoping to get further analysis done on that piece of metal.
That's
so
right.
thanks to, as I say, thanks to people like Ronnie Dugdale and also Brenda, you know, for getting...
But which landing site are you referring to? The one where?
No, that was picked up off the field, off the field down there where Larry said it landed. She was walking along with her husband. That was the day after, she said, when she was walking along the field. She said the sun was shining on this piece of metal or whatever, and she went and picked it up. And she's had it ever since, but she went and gave it to Ronnie Dugdale. Was it earlier this year?
Yeah. No,
well, that was last year.
Last year. We can't say that came from a UFO, but what you can say, it's bloody strange that is identical in analysis to the one that was recovered from Ohio, and the people in the States are quite excited by it, and they want to be able to conduct further tests on it. So I just think it's a piece of the puzzle, isn't it?
She'd come from Liverpool.
What were you saying, Doc?
Yeah,
about UFO experience?
Who?
No, you have to repeat what you just said.
Oh, right, sorry. I went to Sheffield conference up there, Larry was there, and a young lass, when she was a child, she had a UFO experience. And then when I was up there, she turned round to me and said, Doc, there's a piece of the craft or something on the field, which hasn't been found. And what Brenda's just said now has just confirmed that it was a piece of metal or something.
What is your definitive opinion of what happened?
Something happened.
Well, we weren't here, Miles, so we can't say, but we've been investigating it ever since about a few days after.
We was investigators, we weren't here when it happened. So the scenario is we just got to go along with some of what they say, but as investigators.
But the thing is, we do know all the stuff that's happened since. And we've seen things, we've got photographs to prove what's happened since, so yes, something happened.
Alien interdimensional portals, military portals, secret bases, what?
Like Brenda's side of things.
I'm not going to say it was military. Could be...
lighthouses.
No, I'm not going to say it's flying lighthouses either.
Interdimensional time-travelling lighthouses.
Ian has admitted to me that he put on, it goes on record that he's turned around and said, no, I made it up, so somebody's negative with the scenario of the Rendlesham. And he actually said to me that he did believe something happened here, but wanted to put a spanner in the works, saying it was a lighthouse. Great.
We've had other people who said it was a lighthouse drawn out of that and said it was something else too.
I mean, I take it you guys been filming in the forest.
Right, I'm on my way down there now, yeah.
It's so thick. You'd be lucky if you see it, because if you look at the contour of here, it's like a slight hill.
I mean, there's no question at all it is not the lighthouse.
Down there, not up to the
It's completely changed.
Yeah, but Miles, from back in 1980, a lot of these tracks weren't here in 1980. They weren't built until 1988. The barriers were put up in 1988, and then they were named fire tracks, because Richard Davis, who was the forestry guy then, he had all these tracks made. He had the barriers put up, right, because he was scared about the fires and that, and you know, the fire engines getting.
But are you saying that at that time you could have seen the lighthouse?
No, he couldn't, because we've tested it from the...
I mean, it's difficult now because it's overgrown, but it goes down to where the fence is. You could just see the top of the lighthouse, am I right?
Yeah.
And that's it. But if you're in this forest, I mean, look at it. It's thick.
When we came down here, we never ever saw the lighthouse.
No, we didn't.
Okay, this is a distraction. What's your gut feeling about what's going on here?
Cover up, that's a dead cert.
Of what?
There's definitely...
Of what happened?
There's definitely a cover-up, Miles, because we're still being hounded and we're still being tapped on the phone, and we're still having people come down here to interview us.
I know Brenda is, but I'm not so much because I've kept...
We're going to get wiped out here in a minute. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Brenda, for Basis 3 update in 2014, almost 20 years after I filmed the first bits. Which was the heavily censored.
That's right, and also we're pretty sure that Ralph Noyes, he met up with David Daniels as well.
Ralph Noyes at the time was in
He had an MOD, and he was convinced that David Daniels was, in all probability, quite possibly from the Pleiades or wherever. So, but I don't know if if he metamorphosed from a human being to a reptilian in front of Ralph Noyes. But Ralph Noyes was given information and told to go and have a look somewhere up by the River Thames, and he'd see a UFO, and he did. So it's just fascinating stuff. Yeah,
and it's still going on, because I gather there was video shot here last night of UFOs. And
well, I haven't seen it myself, but of course we took the one in December 27th, 2000, and but I don't know what it takes to change anything. You might have a better idea, but all you can do is really just plug away at it and try and ensure
So the main thing is you're doing haunted skies.
Yeah, and we've done, as I say, we've done volume.
And how do people get these?
Well, they can contact us. They can find our telephone number on the internet, Amazon, Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, all the other book sites sell them. And it's, I mean, recently we sent a book to Nexus. Nexus wanted to do a preview of one of the books. They've told me that they will be doing the preview now, because there was some difficulty, shall we say. I felt that at some stages, because this is going back months, that maybe they might not be reviewing it, but they've done it. They're going to review it if they haven't already reviewed it. What I'm saying is that physical book cost £25 of my money to send to Australia, because they didn't want to look at a PDF, which is fair enough. But so all we can do is try at the end of the day, at least make the UFO subject something, give it some respectability, because respectability it deserves.
Well, it's got a lot of anoraks, and it's got a lot of disinformation.
Therein lies the problem. Yeah. The anoraks.
And the only way to get around that is so that the scientific community and people do have some reference material like that. And that's a reference source.
Anything and everything we will record, and a tiny proportion of these sightings, which happen in the middle of the night, may well be fireballs or may well be space debris. But predominantly, the majority isn't. I mean, we recently inherited the Ron West files from Essex, and Ron West used to work with Brenda Butler with the East Anglia UFO Paranormal Research Association, and he had hundreds upon hundreds of files, and we've integrated them into Haunted Skies, and they involve sightings of triangular craft. Now, a lot of them took place during the Belgian wave in the early 1981, but mostly 89, yeah. And although the public has focused on this and the Belgian wave, but how many people really know? How many people really knew about the Essex wave, and also quite a lot of the stuff that was happening in Suffolk?
During a lot of bases here as well.
Sorry?
Military bases.
Military bases, yeah. So that it's stick with it. I mean, I'm not sure whether ultimately it is the best thing in the world to bring everything like this to the public's attention. But I believe that...
Let the public decide that.
Well, let the public decide that, but mainly because I have looked at so much material over the years. It is overwhelming in its presentation, and I don't say that it's I don't say that I'm frightful of the implications, but as you say, you quite rightly said, let the public decide. So maybe it's something I've started that I wish I hadn't, but sure as God made those little green apples, I shall bloody well finish it.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you very much indeed.
God bless. Cheers.
And thank you very much at Rendlesham Forest.
Yeah, I haven't signed it. Have you got 6? Have you got 7?
That's good. Thank you. And I remember seeing something like that in Northern Ireland.
Right, it's yours then. Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.
Anyway, we're here at Rendlesham Forest. We just had a little interview on Haunted Skies. Brilliant reference material for people to get in the subject. We haven't done any filming. We've just been all around the Rendlesham Forest area. We've now got something like 8 or 9 landing sites, the American landing sites here, there, and everywhere. Really, the one over here is behind us. That way is the East Gate. If you go this way and turn left, You have the North Gate, and that's where the landings were with radiation way back in the Rendlesham Forest incidents. And that gate behind us across the runway here just literally behind us of RAF Woodbridge, where an awful lot of activities happened. We've interviewed a little bit of Brenda Butler with Dot Street. Very, very rare to get the two together. They, of course, had their work and research essentially rewritten and taken over by Jenny Randalls and submitted to the MOD for verification and censorship in the book Sky Crash. And like the original source material researchers, something similar seems to happen now with two of the American witnesses. And their book has been essentially taken over by Nick Pope in the States, and that's been sent off the DOD and the MOD for censorship. So that's two books on this subject written by witnesses and investigators who've been working at this at ground level, and it's all approved by the MOD. Yet nothing happened here except a stupid lighthouse, or, you know, a couple of test RF devices to test the effects of security or radiation on different body types. Larry Warren being short, and I think, I forget his name, Penniston being tall. Now, I'm very bad with names. Very sorry I got that wrong. The important thing is that last night the basic push here was very sensitive, and the thing is time distort, space-time distort. The reality we live in is wrong, inverted. Something's wrong here. Now, these sort of things are happening in the Pusey Valley, or the Vale of Pusey, with the crop circles, which are made by people, and they have issues with meeting other entities and shadow people, which people have around here. So we got a couple of military bases here, long history of things happening around here, and now up to 8 landing sites, and a UFO trail which deliberately misdirects people through the forest, right? So nothing's happening here, but there's an awful lot of effort to make sure whatever has happened is well muddied up. So the guilty parties are trying to cover up their trail. So it's up to you to find out what's really going on. And that's what the Bases Project's all about. Well, I hereby am making this statement, and I'm going to actually dig out the tapes that we shot with Steadicam through this forest way back in the late 1990s with Brenda Butler and Peter Parrish. They're convinced and done a huge amount of research that many other things have been going on here. And right up until last night, John Leonard Watson was recording massive UFOs here in the infrared and wide spectrum cameras. There's a huge amount of activity going on here, and it's all being basically kept quiet, because anybody from this country that does the research on it's having their books rewritten, censored, and nothing's happening. Move along. So Bases 3 has been the longest basis ever being shot. We're doing it right now in 2014, and we're going to edit Bases 3 whenever we get into the damn house and get back to our key resource material, which hopefully is still there to be edited. And we're going to do Bases 3, the Butler Report. So this is Miles Bases Update number 16, with haunted skies, suppression of evidence, lots of disinformation and waters being muddied. And we got an anniversary of the Rendlesham Forest incident from 1980. And that's it, with Woodbridge Air Force Base behind us. You could land a space shuttle here, they tell us, but we don't even have that anymore. But the main thing is that these books are censored because this subject, the Rendlesham Forest UFO events and the current events which are being seen up to this day, are subject to secrecy. Now the basic substance, the basic consensus, the basic drop of information that we got out of this weekend's lectures is Reality is not what we think it seems to be. And now there are other people begin to notice these reality issues. I called this a long time ago the RMS, the Reality Management System. It's been put in Andrew Power's book, Ireland, Land of the Pharaohs. He mentions a whole matrix reality which has been created to sustain us in a false reality, which we, with our consciousness, are used to generate. So if we're able to access our own software, we'll be able to possibly access and see what really is going on in terms of the so-called reality that we see. We know from a lot of the basis interviews that there's two types of reptilian, one the shapeshifter types and the ones which retain their original actual shape as a reptilian, but get us to see them as human, much like in the film They Live. So this factor, this issue, and the reality weapons, and I'll be closing this update with another Wilson Clyde radio bit of video that we got just outside here over Salisbury Plain yesterday. Again, we've had a major change in the weather since that, but in fact we had unscheduled rain here, which wasn't forecast, so we're able to say that the next day. But the point is that these weapon systems which can create weather engineering, scalar weather engineering, which I was very honoured to be briefed on for many, many hours on late night phone calls with Tom Bearden at least 10 or 15 years ago. A scalar weather warfare, this kind of technology gives us access to time-space manipulation, the ability to directly engineer reality. Now that's what seems to be going on. They've got the technology to do this, it seems, since 9/11, since some of the commentators and observers, forget about all the discussions about how those buildings came down. It's the reality management issues which are the important things about the current things about 9/11. So reality management systems, consciousness manipulation, is key to the prison we seem to be in. Now, by saying that, we could then be directly engineering that prison by putting it out there, so to speak, into the universe. So there are very dangerous forces working against us, and it's clear, it's becoming more and more patently clear that the broadcast media, that the established avenues and sources of information are completely manipulated beyond any shadow of a doubt, and that in some respects to a lot of commentators may feel very naive, but the scale of this means that we have to somehow generate an independent source of information transmission which can tell people what's happening, and we have to engineer that in such a way that it bypasses all the other stuff, the scuttlers, even the black goo and those transmitters I was working with all those years ago, that black substance, that energetic intelligence, which only allowed those transmitters to work after it left. So there was some reason why that black goo was in there, but we don't want to go on the black goo again. Okay, well, I've waffled on long enough. The conversion of the files is finished, so we're going to get on with the edit of update number 16. Well, here we have another Wilson's Clyde radial pattern in good old Wiltshire. Now the sun is to the right of this, okay? So the dark strands in these ain't shadows. It's what happens when you get these highly stressed linear clouds. Good old scalar weather engineering operating on the highest point in England around here, which is the high point between London and Bristol, and it's over there, Milk Hill. Okay, so I don't know what relevance that has, but this waveform's only come on in this clear, cloudy sky, and that's a classic Wilson's Clyde radial thing, and it just so happens to be just after be listening to the 9/11 stuff on Coast, where they deny the Judy Wood material. Well, the Judy Wood material and the Hutchison effect is technology which is
all about scalar weather engineering, and it's about reality management, because that stuff can change reality and you can use it to manufacture and engineer reality. And it's in the human physics, let alone all the advanced stuff that they got all those years ago. You can see on the left there that the way that's been rippled and ripped the... I don't know, I've been doing this for ages, for years. And here we have another Wilson Cloud Radio weather engineering pattern for... I'll have to put this in the update number 16 about Rendlesham Forest. Just happens to be right outside the door, right in front of our eyes. See that thick band on the right, just above the tree? Very sharp, narrow line and all that. Force field. If you're familiar with iron filings on a north pole and south pole of a magnet, that's roughly what we're looking at here. Anyway, there it is now, the Wilson Cloud Radio. So the weather's going to be changing in England, I suspect, in the next 36 hours very substantially. But then you could probably say that about any weather forecast. Oh, it's going to change in 36 hours. Anyway, there it is, Wilson Cloud Radio over Salisbury Plain, filmed from Well Cottage in late September.
In the sunshine and the clouds. Yesterday we had weather engineering behind us. We've still got evidence of that right now, but it's too bright to show on the camera.